So I recently got this heater in my garage, and of course, it's installed and it comes with this, which works. But the problem with that is it's always trying to keep a, very close temp. So if I set it to 60, it'll turn on, turn off after it heats to 60. It quickly cools off 1 or 2 degrees, back on again. And also, it has no sense of are these open or closed? Because if they're open, really don't want that heater on. So, how can we make that smart fairly easily? So, my solution was up here, I got a temperature sensor that reports to Home Assistant. And then I took the wires that used to be running to this because those ran into the heater, and I just unhooked it and then connected it into this Shelly1. So that's the red and the white wire there. And then the two black wires on the right are just coming off of this power supply. So I'll show you the Node Red flows here in a second, but just pretty much I'm using this to monitor the temperature, and then when certain conditions are met, it will tell that switch to close, heater comes on, and then heater will turn off. If, for instance, you'll see if either of these two, if they're open for longer than 3 minutes. So onto the flows.
So I broke down the heater into kind of 4 areas here. I have it turning on, turning off, checking to see if it's on for too long, and then changing the set points depending on other conditions. So to kind of help all these flows work, you'll see here under garage. So here's my current temp. I have a helper for the heater turn on temp. So if pretty much you'll see in the flow here, if this number is less than that, it will turn on and it will stay on until this temp reading is above the turn off temp. And then I also have a helper called keep heater off and keep heater on, which I will go into once we start looking at the flows here. So the turn on flow, it's checking to see is the current temp. So the sensor I have sitting up there, is it less than the garage heater turn on temp? So right now, is it less than 58? If it is, then it will follow this. Just checking to see is the heater off, because if it's already on, there's no point to continue on. So it's just making sure the heater's off. And then is the heater stay off override? Is that override off? And the wording kind of gets confusing here, but it makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you. You may want to call it something else, but so the stay off override, which is this keep heater off. So if I turn this on, then no matter if it's 28 in there, it will never get past this point. So I just may have instances where I don't want the heater to run. So just as long as I keep this on, the heater will never run. So it's just checking to make sure I don't want to keep it off. And as long as I don't want to keep it off, then it's checking to see, are my garage doors closed? Which I also have a helper for, which is up here. Here we go. So if both garages are closed, if both closed, it turns on the helper. And if one or both are open, it turns it off. Very simple. So assuming that helper's on, which means they're both closed. Where am I at here? Here we go. Is that helper on? Then we'll finally turn the switch, turn on, and the heater will kick on. And the heater will stay on until the next flow here is met. But before we go there, there is another option to turn the heater on, and that's simply, is the heater on override on? So the on override, if you remember, is right here, keep heater on. So if I flip that on, then it will bypass all these temp point checks. And as long as the off override isn't on and the garages are closed, it will then turn the heater on. And the heater, as I said, will run until we are greater than our turn off temp, which, if you remember, is 64 right now. So are we over 64? If we are, just check to see, is the heater on. This isn't really necessary. I personally don't like flows to continue if there's no need to. Just a little thing I do. So if the heater is on, then it'll continue on. And is the stay on override off? Because remember, again, if I turn this keep heater on, I'm pretty much overriding everything and saying, hey, I don't care what the temperature is, I want the heater to stay on. So it's just checking to make sure that's not on, and then it will turn the heater off. Another option is if the heater off override is on, it will then turn it off. And as you can see, I have this one bypassing the on override. So I gave precedence to the off override, which just means if both off and on are both true or on, the off takes precedence. So it will remain off even though I have the on as well. And then the third option to turn the heater off is if either of our garage doors, so if that helper I showed you earlier, if it's off for more than 3 minutes, then it will just check to make sure the on override isn't on, and then it will turn the heaters off. I just chose 3 minutes because on average when we're leaving in the morning for work, they're not open more than a minute or two, so I just added a little bit of cushion on there. And this is just checking to see, is it on for, in essence, too long? Because to heat up to temp, it only takes it, average is like 9 to 10 minutes. So if the heater's turned on, every time the heater's turned on, it will start this 30-minute timer. And if it's now on, and it will kind of just hang out here, so nothing will happen for 30 minutes. And if the heater has not turned off within those 30 minutes, which if it is turned off, then we just send a stop payload, which will stop this timer, or reset it, not stop, but reset really. But assuming it's not turned off and the 30 minutes has elapsed, it's going to send an alert to my phone, and it's going to also now start this 5-minute timer. So I, in essence, have 5 minutes to respond to the alert that just pretty much says, hey, heater's been on for more than half an hour. Do you want to keep it on or turn it off? So you'll see here, if I say to turn it off, it'll follow 1. If I say keep on, it'll follow 2. So if I say turn off, it follows this one up here, which turns the heater off. If I say keep on, then I'm just having it send the stop payload to this 5-minute timer to say, hey, I chose to keep it on, so, just let me keep it on and I'll turn it off when I want to. And again, if we follow this one up here, this off one, that also triggers this, which will send stop to, or reset, if you will, to the 30-minute and 5-minute timers so that we're ready for the next cycle when the heater turns on again. And then finally here is changing these turn on and turn off temps based on certain events. So pretty much if we turn night mode on, which is like our alarm, if we turn it on, then chances are we're not going to be heading in there anytime soon. So I lowered the turn on temp to 50 and the turn off temp to 55. So it won't turn on until it's cooler than 50, and once it heats it up to 55, it turns it off. But then once we wake up and we turn night mode off, I kind of want it to get warmer in there, so we increase the turn on to 58 and the turn off to 64. And then we go even higher from 6:30 a.m. to 7, which is on average when we're usually leaving. We're then turning on at 62 and not turning off till it heats it up to 67. So that's really all there is, not too much in there. The one thing I haven't yet looked into too much, and I really should, is an instance where the heater's on. So this heater on, it's now turned it on, and then something happens with my Home Assistant and it crashes, which I can't really say my whole Home Assistant has crashed yet. I've been running it about a year, but there's always a first time for everything. So my problem is that if the heater's on and Home Assistant crashes, then there's no logic to turn that heater off again. So I'm trying to think of a way to, kind of like my timer here, but it'd just be a more, old school, somehow manual timer that's like, hey, if this heater's on for more than an hour, kill power to it. And it has to be not part of Home Assistant, obviously, because then it wouldn't work if Home Assistant crashed. But I haven't thought too much about that, but I probably should. So aside from that, these flows have been working well for me. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I will do my best to answer it. Thank you.